And welcome back to Mountain Glen Farm. Today is May 14th, 2021, and I've been out in the field picking my Pasture Bouquet for this springtime. Now I try to do this at least 3 times a year, one time in spring, one time in summer, one time in fall, so that I can gauge what is currently growing in my pasture, and I can kind of watch those species throughout the whole entire growing season as well. Plus it gives me a chance to learn new plants. If there's a plant that I don't know or I'm not familiar with, I can take this home and identify it later. So let's go ahead and see what I've picked today. So here's my forages kind of laid out. I've got my grasses on this end, I've got my legumes here, and I've got the rest I'm going to consider as just forbs. So I've got 5 different types of species of grasses. I've got white and red clovers. The red clovers are definitely easy to identify this time of year. They have a beautiful, they're just starting to blossom. These beautiful red blossoms there, and they have fuzzy hairs on the stems. So you can tell that that's a red clover because of that. I had a white clover here, but it must have blown off with the wind here. We've got some vetch, which is also a legume. Now last year when I was doing my Pasture Bouquet, I noticed that this vetch, and it was all over the place. It was in big clumps, it was very dense, the cattle loved it. This year not so much, so it's interesting to just see year to year the differences, and it's already starting to have a little seed pod here. You can see it looks kind of like a small green bean, and you can see the little seeds inside, and it's great. By the end of summer these things will dry up, and as you walk through the fields, if you brush past one that's dry, this pod will split in two and fling all the seeds all over the place, and you can actually hear it. It's kind of cool. We also have some buttercup, which I think most people can identify. Everything, all the buttercups are in blossom right now and pretty in yellow. Can also be an indicator species of tight grazing. You kind of have it all over the place. It's really not thick or dense. It's kind of just sporadic throughout this pasture, so I'm definitely not worried about it. Here are some forbs that I don't really know what they are. If you can tell what these are just from this, then shoot me a comment. It looks like it's going to start to go to flower here in the next week or so. And then I believe this is some type of chickweed, which is also going to flower. Lots of flowers right now, pretty little white flowers. And then we have, I just took a leaf of multiflora rose, which we don't really want in our fields, but they're here. And if you have goats or sheep, they would probably devour these, so good for them. Then we have a dandelion leaf that's kind of gotten all shriveled up. We got plenty of dandelion throughout here, which is really a great spring tonic for the cows. Also for people if you ever want to give it a try in a tea. And then we have 2 different types of plantain. And then we have, I believe this is either yellow dock or curly dock, which likes compaction. And I actually found this one where we had fed a bale of hay 2 years ago. So it's working on that compaction layer that we had in the field, which is fine because in a couple years this plant will probably be gone out of that section. So I think I've counted them up. There's about 18 different species, and I literally just took like 10 minutes and just walked around one field, kind of meandering around to see what we had. So a couple of great things about doing this is, number one, you obviously get to go around and walk outside and enjoy some exercise and sun, but while you're doing that, you get to evaluate your pastures. You get to see what forages are out there. You get to see how much or how many of that forage is out in your pasture. And you can see if there's any plants you don't know, which is a great way to, take it home and learn to identify it. There's all kinds of resources on the internet these days. I think there's even apps you can get on your phone where you can take a picture of a plant and it can tell you the actual species, and you hope that it's right. But so you get to do pasture evaluation, know what ratios you have out in your field. You get to learn your plants. It's really great for seeing if there's plants that are coming up that in years past you maybe never noticed or never actually had in your pastures before. I know with a lot of rotational grazing, if you start on a field or on a farm that has maybe been conventionally grazed for a long time and you start rotationally grazing it, you might start noticing different plants coming up that weren't previously there because of the grazing practices and the management that was done before. So that's really fun to start to gather that information, and you can kind of watch it transform over the years. I know this farm here was a rental farm before we purchased it, and for about 20 years, and it was 40 acres of crop ground and 120 acres of one pasture. That's it. There was 2 fields, crop ground field and pasture field, and it was mowed down to literally a golf course. And it was, I remember when we first were looking at this farm, my dad was really impressed with it. He's like, I think this farm's going to do good. And I just kept looking at all the little short vegetation, was like, this farm isn't going to produce anything. But we gave it 6 months of rest. We didn't have any animals on it for 6 to 7 months. And just look at the plethora of forages coming up now. And this is just in springtime. Other plants will start to come up in another month or two as summer starts to come on in and hotter weather. But it's just a really great activity to do. And not only that, but you get to kind of become in tune and aligned with what's going on in your pastures. So I can kind of look at my pastures, and because I've learned to identify specific plants, I can kind of start looking out in a distance and seeing that, okay, I see some clumping of some dark green over there. Well, I already know that that's red clover because I already know what red clover looks like, and over the years I've started to watch how it grows and how it likes to grow in clumps in certain areas. And so I can start to watch from a distance what kind of forages are out in my field. I don't actually have to go out and take a step by step and, evaluate every single square foot of it. I can just kind of go out and do a quick scan of the field and know what's in my pastures. So that's also a really great, effect of doing this. You get to become in tune with the plants and get to notice them up close and personal, but also in a distance. Plus, if you are out in your field and you want to see what the cows have been grazing, but they've grazed it down, if I start to learn to identify certain parts of the plant, I can identify what the cows are eating at certain times of year and just take mental note of all that. So it's a really good tool and technique to keep using on your farm. Alright folks, well I hope you enjoyed my video today, and I hope it's encouraged you to go out and pick your own Pasture Bouquet. And it's a really great activity for you to do with your friends or family or your partner, and really get kind of in tune with your pasture. And that might sound a little woo-woo, but it's not supposed to be. If you can go out and kind of start to analyze what is in your pasture, the ratios, what the cows are eating, what they're not eating, what's growing this time of year, it really does take your grazing practice and knowledge to the next level. And one thing for me is that if I don't know what a plant is, I don't really notice it. And what I mean by that is if I don't know, I'll just give you an example. A few years back, before we had our native warm season grass stand, I didn't know what Indian grass, big blue stem, or little blue stem looked like until we planted it and we went through a whole growing season. And I remember the following year, I was out canoeing or kayaking in one of the rivers in the area, and I kept geeking out because I was just like, there's big blue stem, there's big blue stem. It was all over the place. The entire 2-hour trip down the river, it was big blue stem the entire bank of the river. And I had never noticed that before because I didn't know what it was. And so after we, got that stand planted, I was more informed on that grass and really started to notice it in our native setting. So that was really exciting. So that's what I'm saying. If you don't know what a plant is, you're maybe not as likely to notice it out in your fields, but when you start to
identify the ones that you don't already know, you will start to really see it all over the place. So that's really good to know, good knowledge. And yeah, I think if you just do this at least once a year, but if you can do it a couple more times, that would be great too. But get out there, look at your pastures, see what's growing, and yeah, have fun doing it, guys. All right, until next time.